In this video, I'm gonna be covering pretty much every issue that I have seen someone come across with proxies and confusions that people frequently have. I'm gonna pop up on screen right now the topics I'm going to be talking about, as well as the timestamp. So if there's a specific issue you're looking for that you want to learn about, you can go ahead and skip to that timestamp, but I would highly recommend that you watch the entire video because all of this information is going to be stuff that is beneficial to have in the future. If you haven't already watched my original proxy video, click the card up on the screen now, because if you don't watch that one, a lot of things in this video aren't going to make sense, so I highly recommend watching that first. So without further ado, let's dive right in. The first two things that we're gonna be covering are the new way of making proxies, because Adobe has actually simplified this significantly in Premiere Pro version 14.3.2, as well as can you make proxies if you've already started a project and began editing it? And the answer to that question is yes. No matter the stage of the project you are in, you can always make proxies and nothing will change. Even if you have finished the entire video, you could make proxies at the very end if you wanted to. So never be afraid to make proxies at any stage. The only thing you have to do is just import all of your footage first, and then you can create proxies. So now let's go over the new way to make proxies. So you're gonna right click on your footage, come down to Proxy, create proxies, and then make sure you're on QuickTime. Please do not be on H.264. I'll explain this more later, but please, for the love of everything, don't use H.264. Select QuickTime, and then these all right here are presets that I've already made. So you can go ahead and ignore all of these and pay attention to everything down here. Prior to this, first there wasn't even an option for ProRes, but what they also used to do is they had specific resolutions that you had to pick. And if you picked the wrong resolution, you would get black bars on your proxy footage. Now notice how it just says low resolution, medium resolution, and high resolution. This is because what Adobe has done is they've made their presets smart. And no matter your resolution, whether it's 8K, 6K, 5K, 4K, 1080p, does not matter. It will know how to make a low resolution proxy of that and match the aspect ratio. So no matter what footage you are working with, the aspect ratio will always be correct and you will never have those black bars again. You don't have to make any presets because Adobe's already made them for you. So if you wanted to make your proxy creation really easy, literally you just click this, click OK, and you're done. That's all you would have to do to make proxies. No more black bars, everything is fine, super simple. The only thing to be aware of that I'm not a huge fan is that you cannot build in a watermark on these presets. There's no way to take the presets that Adobe has made and modify them. So you can't add a watermark, which to me is a huge bummer. I really like having a watermark because at a quick glance, you can easily tell if your footage is set to proxies or not. A common thing that I see is people think they made proxies, or they made proxies and didn't attach them, and they toggle the button on and off, and performance isn't changing. That's because the proxy isn't attached. So that's why I like having the watermark. At the end of the day, it's not a huge deal, but just something to be aware of. Another way that you can see if you actually have your proxies attached is in this metadata display. By default, this is not enabled. So you'll need to right click on this, metadata display, and then just search proxy and make sure proxy is checked on. And now it will tell you if you have proxies attached. So for all of these files, I have a proxy attached, and right here, I have no proxy attached. If I went ahead and clicked this and did proxy deattach proxies, this would now say offline. So that's one way you can see if you have a proxy file associated or not, but to me, that's still not as nice as having the watermark. Basically, long story short, Adobe made the proxies super easy now. You don't have to make the preset anymore if you don't want to. All you have to do is click a button and everything will be just fine. Moving along, I am gonna talk about mismatched resolutions because this did confuse a lot of people, and if you plan on just using the new way of making proxies and you don't care about making presets anymore or having a watermark, you can skip this part, but if you do still care about that and you wanna know why the mismatched resolution thing happened, I'm gonna explain that now. So the most common reason that people had this issue is that there are two types of 4K. There is Ultra HD 4K, which is UHD, which is 3840 by 2160. Then there is DCI 4K, which is 4096 by 2160. DCI 4K is a little bit wider than Ultra HD. So if you used a proxy preset that was in the same aspect ratio as Ultra HD on a DCI clip, then you would get black bars. So I'm gonna show you really quick. I purposely used the wrong proxy preset on this drone footage, which is 3840 by 2160. I used the aspect ratio that would have been for 4096 by 2160. And now watch what happens. If I turn this on, I get black bars on the side. And now that's obviously really annoying when toggling on and off your proxies. It doesn't really affect anything. It's really just a visual thing. It's not gonna change anything about how you edit, but it is annoying to look at. All right, so I've hopped into Media Encoder just so I can visually show you why this happens. We're gonna use a little bit of math to make this a little bit easier. In my original video, we made two proxy presets. We made 1024 by 540, which was for DCI 4K, and then we also made 1280 by 720, which was for Ultra HD 4K or 1080p footage. So right here, this drone clip is in Ultra HD. So now I'm gonna show you what would happen if we were to use the DCI 4K aspect ratio on this 3840 by 2160 clip. So I'm gonna type in 1024 by 540. And now notice, we have black bars because these aspect ratios don't match. So 1024 by 540 is 1/4 the resolution of regular DCI 4K. So here's how you can make this super easy. I'm gonna take 4096 and divide that by 4. That would make this 1/4 the original size. And you'll see we get 1024. So 1024 divides into 4096 4 times evenly. But now watch what happens if we do 3840 and divide that by 1024. This number is not even. This number always needs to be even. So if you're ever wondering how to figure out what resolution you need, first decide if you want 1/4 resolution or half resolution for your proxy. So in this case, if you wanted half resolution of UHD 4K, you would divide it by 2, and that's 1920. Then you would take 2160 and divide that by 2, and you get 1080. So half resolution of 4K is just 1920 by 1080. Now, if we do that by 4, it's gonna be 540 for 2160, and for 3840, it's gonna be 960. So if we wanted a 1/4 resolution proxy of this resolution, we would do 960 by 540. So now if we change this resolution to 960 by 540, notice the bars are gone. And I'm showing you this in Media Encoder because it actually shows me the bars when I type in a resolution, so it makes it really easy to visualize here. But basically all you need to know is you're probably gonna make most of your proxies in 1/4 resolution. So just take your resolution, the horizontal and vertical, and divide it by 4. So 4096 divided by 4 is 1024. And then if we do 2160 divided by 4, we get 540. If we wanted to make 1/4 resolution proxies for 1920 by 1080, 1920 by 1080, divide that by 4, we'd get 480. 1080 divided by 4, we would get 270. So if I did 480 by 270, you can see we get no black bars. But now if I use the DCI resolution again, 1024 by 540, you get black bars. And this is because the aspect ratios just don't match. The aspect ratios need to match since DCI 4K is a little bit wider than traditional Ultra HD. So now I realize that was a whole lot of numbers spit at you and it can get kind of confusing, but really all you need to know is whether you want to do half resolution, 1/4, or even lower. And all you would have to do is take the resolution of your footage, divide both of those numbers by 4, and that's the resolution of the proxy that you want to use. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll leave a cheat sheet down in the description for all of the math and whatnot, so you can just take a look at that. All right, the next thing I'm gonna be talking about is never import the proxy files into your project. When you create proxies, Premiere will automatically attach them to your original footage when you're done, and then all you do to toggle between your proxies is you click this button. And you can see my proxy turned on when I clicked this button. If you don't have this button, you just click this plus icon, and then you go ahead and find this little toggle proxies button and drag it into your toolbar. But make sure that you never import the originals. What I have seen a lot of people do is they have all of their original footage, they make their proxies, and then they pull up the import dialog, and then they go find their original footage, and then they find the proxies folder, and they import this into their project. And then what they do is instead of working with the original footage on the timeline, they place their proxies down here and they start editing this. Do not do this, because if I turn this button on and off now, these proxy files are linked to nothing. You brought these in as their own standalone file, and this button is doing nothing now. And now what you're gonna do is you'll edit your entire video in these low resolution proxies, and there's no way or no easy way to relink your original high resolution footage. So do not do that. Under any circumstance, do not import your proxies into the project. That is not how proxies are designed to be used. Don't do that. It is only gonna make your proxy life a nightmare. So if you ever somehow get these inside of here, take them out. And you can know if it's a proxy file because Premiere always appends proxy at the end of the file. So here's the original files and here's the proxy files. Don't edit with these, get these out of your project, don't bring them in. Now, another common question I get asked is, will Premiere export my proxies? If my proxies are enabled and I export my video, is it gonna export the original footage or the proxy? As of Premiere 14.3.2, no matter what, it will always export your original footage. Even if you leave this button on, it's always gonna export your original footage. But now if we hop into the beta version of Premiere, so honestly, by the time you're watching this, the latest beta will probably just become the regular version of Premiere, but I've got this and I'm going to enable my proxy. Now I'm gonna go to the export dialog and you're gonna notice a new button. There's a button here that says use proxies. So even if your proxies were enabled while editing, they're not going to export by default. You have to tell Premiere to export using your proxies, and now you can see my proxy pops up. So if you wanted a low resolution export to export quicker or maybe preview to a client, you could use this, but Premiere will always use the originals. No matter what, unless you click this button, Premiere is always using the originals. And as of Premiere 14.3.2, there's not even a way to use that export proxies button. So if you're on an older version of Premiere, don't even worry about it. It's always gonna export the originals no matter what. Now, another common question I get asked is, do Windows users have access to ProRes? And yes, you do. It works totally fine as long as you are on Premiere version 13.1.5. If you are on that or newer, all Windows users have the ability to import, export, and work with ProRes files. So no worries about that. Mac and Windows users can use ProRes inside of Premiere Pro. Now this next question is not so much an issue if you're gonna use the new way of making proxies, because again, Adobe kind of made this whole thing just way easier for everybody. But if you've already made presets like me, a common issue that I see is people make their proxies, let's say it's for 60 FPS drone footage, and then they toggle on the proxy, and when they try and slow it down, it's really choppy and they can't figure out why. This is because you probably made your ingest preset wrong. So I'm gonna hop into Media Encoder here, and then on my encoding preset, I'm gonna right click it and preset settings and come to where it says frame rate. If this says anything besides based on source, you made your preset wrong. All of these should say based on source. This means that it will base the frame rate off of your original footage. So if your original footage was 60 FPS, it will make 60 FPS proxies. If your original footage was 24 frames per second, it will make 24 FPS proxies. But what a lot of people do is this is unchecked and it's an actual frame rate. So this means if it's like this, no matter what your original file is, it's going to make a proxy that is in this frame rate. So I could change this to 30, and now all of my footage for proxies is gonna be in a frame rate of 30. You don't want this, you want this to be based on source, so that way it doesn't matter what the frame rate is, Premiere just figures it out for you. So if you're having issues with that, where your proxies are in 24 frames per second, but your original is in 60, it's probably because of this. All right, now another common issue I see people have is when they try to connect a proxy that was made in Resolve, or maybe they just made a proxy file in any other program. It doesn't really matter what program it was made in, but it happens the most with Resolve since a lot of people make proxies in Resolve. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and attach the proxy I made in Resolve to this drone footage right here. So I'm gonna right click, proxy, attach proxies, and then I'm gonna go ahead and navigate to my Resolve proxy, and I'm gonna click open. And now I get this error that says proxy media and full resolution media must have matching audio channels. And you're like, well, what the heck? What's the problem? This drone footage doesn't even have audio. Well, when I made this Resolve proxy, if I drag this onto the timeline, you'll notice it has audio, it's just blank. So Resolve generated a blank audio file for it. For Premiere to work with proxies, and this is really annoying, I know, I don't know why, no one really knows why, the proxy file and the original media must have the same matching audio channels. They cannot be different. You can't have a file that has no audio and one that has audio and make them a proxy together. So that's why these won't link up. And whenever people make proxies in Resolve, they either remove all of the audio, or if you had a clip that had multiple audio channels, like 4 audio channels from like an MXF file, if that gets mixed down to 1, but you're editing the original with 4 audio channels, Premiere cannot match those proxies up. So if you are making proxies in Resolve, make sure that the audio channels match the original footage. The proxies need to match. If they do not, you're gonna have a horrible time making this work. You're gonna have a huge headache, especially if you generated thousands of proxy files, only later to find out that you can't get them to link up. So if you're not the one making the proxies and you have a DIT, make sure you tell them that the proxy files audio channels need to match the originals. This is very, very important, because as you saw, if they don't match, there is no way you are getting these to import. And now another reason earlier that I said not to use H.264 is H.264 only supports up to 4 audio channels at a maximum resolution of 2000 by 2000. So this means if you had a 4K clip with 8 audio channels, you definitely can't use H.264 because it doesn't support that many audio channels at that high of a resolution. So this is why I suggest using ProRes, Cineform, or DNX, because they all support higher audio channels. So anytime you're gonna be working on a big project and you have lots of audio channels, make 1 or 2 proxies first, make sure they link up just fine, and then generate the rest. But don't make 1,000 proxies before knowing that those are going to attach. Again, this is really only an issue if you are making proxies in another program and then attaching them in Premiere. This is also a problem with some cameras because the proxy files that the camera generates doesn't have all of the audio channels, which means you just can't even use those in Premiere. It's annoying. I hope Adobe will change this in the future because no one really cares about the audio. They only care about the picture. So we'll see, but just be aware that the audio channels need to match. All right, now here is an issue I see all the time. And everyone, I'm telling you, you gotta stop doing this. Interpreting footage in Premiere causes so many issues for so many different workflows that it's just not worth using. So what I see a lot of people say is they go, hey, I interpreted my footage. Actually, a lot of times they don't say they interpreted their footage, which is a big problem because it makes it harder to diagnose. But, so I'm going through my footage, it's in slow motion because it's been interpreted, and I've generated a proxy for it. So now watch what happens when I turn this proxy on. My footage changed. What on earth? They don't even line up. They're on different areas. And if I play back the proxy, it's playing back in full speed. But now if I switch to the original, we're playing in slow motion. What the heck happened? This is because interpreting footage and proxies is totally broken. I have another video on how to work with this, but honestly guys, just stop interpreting your footage. On screen, I'm gonna pop up a card right now that will take you to a video that explains more in depth why you should stop interpreting. But seriously, it is broken on so many levels. It shouldn't be used. Adobe has said that this is not the way it was intended to be used. Yes, it can work that way, but for a lot of workflows, it's totally broken, especially for proxies, as you can see. Things just don't line up. If you interpreted your original footage, it does not interpret your proxies unless you go through a big workaround to also interpret your proxies that I don't think is worth going through. I think everyone should just stop interpreting their footage and do batch slow motion the way I suggest in the other video. You can search on YouTube how to interpret proxy footage, and there are workarounds all across the internet, but it's just really lame and you guys should not even do it. All right, next up, what I wanna tell you is that if you apply warp stabilizer to a clip that has a proxy enabled, you can see my proxy is on. I'm gonna apply warp stabilizer. As soon as this is applied, your proxy is disabled. I don't know the exact reasoning behind this. My guess is warp stabilizer needs to analyze the original footage for it to work. So once warp stabilizer is applied, you can no longer use your proxy on that clip. If you disable warp stabilizer, it will come back. I could disable it and now my proxy's back, but anytime it's enabled, you're not going to be able to use your proxy. So if you ever see your proxy disable or you're wondering why playback is so bad when warp stabilizer is applied, it's because your proxy is disabled. So just be aware of that. So now another common question I see is I shot in 4K so I could punch in on a 1080p timeline. If I'm working with low resolution proxies, doesn't that mean I can't do that anymore? And the answer is no, because the proxies are just a substitute while you're editing, and they always match the same scale as your 4K footage. So I've got 4K footage on a 1080p timeline here. If I turn it on and off here, you can see I've got the proxy. I'm gonna zoom out just to show you. I've zoomed out, here's the proxy. If I turn it off, the scaling is still the same. If I zoom into 50 here, the proxy is still in the same size. So you can reframe however you want while you're working with a proxy. And then once you disable it, everything is the same. So don't worry about that. If you shot in 4K so you can punch in, you can still do that. Proxies are just there to make editing easier. Things may look lower resolution, but when you go back to the 4K, you're just fine. So there you guys go. I know that was a really long-winded video, but these are things I see in comments all the time. People get so stuck and they start to hate proxies. And a lot of it is just because of really simple workflow errors. They don't seem very simple because people don't explain these in other videos and people get stuck. But if you follow the best practices, everything works so good. All right, so there you guys go. If this video helped you out and solved any of your issues, make sure to hit that like button down below and give that subscribe button a click. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.